Hey everybody, and welcome back to another installment in the Healing from CPTSD YouTube channel. I'm happy to be back with you. So in today's episode, I really wanted to talk about I wanted to talk about a topic that's more along the lines of healing from CPTSD, rather than talking about narcissistic abuse and all that stuff. So believe it or not, and as you saw from the thumbnail and the title of this video, there's only two fundamental keys that you need to heal from CPTSD and to get your life back. And I know you might be thinking, hey, you're crazy, man. There's got to be more to it than that. And, each of these two fundamental keys, there are sort of, different aspects to each of these keys, but fundamentally, if you boil it all down, there's only two things you really need to remember. And what's also neat is there's different ways of going about getting these two keys met, right? So you can kind of adapt it to yourself and whatever you want to do, whatever works for you, or wherever you are in the world and stuff like that. So those two keys are regaining your ability for free self-expression and practicing self-love. And really, believe it or not, I know that might sound a little simple, but it's true. It really is true. Looking back from where I used to be, especially in high school and in my teenage years and 20s, my ability to speak and my levels of anxiety, my levels of introversion. I'm still an introvert. I enjoy doing introverted things. But now I'm much more, I can talk to people more, more openly and more in a healthy way. I don't have all that anxiety running through me and all that stuff in your head where it's like, man, am I going to say the right thing? And the reason I know I'm going to say the right thing is because I practiced. I had to recondition my communication skills. I just had to get better communication skills. So, and also once you learn how to once you kind of raise your emotional intelligence a little bit and you know what you need to hear, sort of what would be nice for you to hear, you can start talking to other people's emotional selves, right? And that's what people, they're not necessarily going to come out and say that, but that's what they want. That's what people like. They like to feel sort of seen and heard and acknowledged and even loved, sort of on an emotional level. So free self-expression, what do we mean by this? If you've watched, I've talked about this a little bit before. If you've gone through the Healing from CPTSD course, there's a whole module on this. Free self-expression, just so you have some concept of it, is things like speaking openly and freely, singing and dancing. It's really just anything where you're expressing yourself freely and even in front of other people. You don't have to sing and dance or go on Dancing with the Stars or whatever, but really, and I learned this from these different workshops that I went to, because we had, a lot of the exercises were, you're in this room with all these people and they kind of go around the room and you have to be really, not just talk in front of other people, but you have to be really vulnerable and genuine and authentic, and they'll see if you're not, So it helped me get kind of back in line with my core self, what I was really feeling. Because I'm sure this probably applies to you in some way, but with CPTSD, you're kind of especially if you grew up like that, there's a disconnect between your intellectual mind and your sort of emotional self, your heart center. You're sort of I guess they call it dissociation. That's kind of what it feels like. So you got to get that back in line, and learning to identify what you feel and then speaking that from your voice will realign that. And doing so is free self-expression. What it's going to do is it's going to alleviate toxic shame. That's how you get rid of shame, honestly. And that feel if you're in a room, a 12-step group, and you share some secrets or something that's sensitive, you'll feel better after you share. You're open and honest, right? That feeling of feeling better is shame sort of leaving your mind and your body. Social anxiety will begin to decrease as you become more comfortable with free self-expression. And again, the talking is where I really like to focus on, which is really assertiveness and effective communication, because the singing and dancing, that can come later. And that is really helpful, by the way. And by the way, some of these workshops did have you singing and dancing, in front of everybody. And I was like, oh man, you don't have to do any of that. You can just start with speaking openly and honestly about anything, right? With someone else, or honestly, what's great about free self-expression is you can just do this on your own with a notepad and a pen, honestly. Just writing down just your authentic and genuine feelings and thoughts on a particular issue, really letting yourself grieve emotionally and letting it rip on paper. That's honestly the best thing. I honestly believe that's the best way of healing emotionally, of emotionally grieving, and it's what they call verbal ventilation. You can do it like with your voice with another person, but you can also do it on paper. I like the paper because it's much more, when you're using the pen and you're writing, you're using a pen, it requires you to use the logic side of your brain. And when you're writing about emotional issues, what's interesting is it allows, when you're using the pen on paper, it allows emotional stuff, right? Like stuff you wouldn't be able to put into words, let's say, normally, to come over to the logic side of the brain because you're using the pen to write it. So it's like you're using both sides of your brain at the same time. It's so powerful. I'm telling you, for me, this was the best, like as far as healing and grieving and really processing any trauma or any, energetic or emotional gunk. And that's a big part of the Healing from CPTSD course. If you want to just write down thoughts or feelings, or write down your memories on something and then write your thoughts and feelings down about that, that's how you heal trauma, honestly. You really don't need anyone else outside of you, believe it or not. So that's free self-expression. When you regain your ability to express yourself and know what you're feeling, and you're not feeling like ashamed anymore or whatever, you're not around someone who's constantly putting you down or shutting you down. Oh my God, it's so freeing. I mean, that alone is like, oh wow, like I'm back, right? Like I'm not like hidden in some kind of inner cloak of emotional shame here. And then the self-love, of course, that applies to every area of your life, right? Like eating healthy, that's self-love. Dealing with your inner critic. Really what that is it's the inner critic is like mental abuse to yourself, right? So counter that with self-love, self-loving thoughts. Being around people that respect you and treat you with respect. That's all that stuff is covered with self-love. Doing nice things for yourself, working on yourself, even like meditation and stuff like that. All that falls under the category of self-love. So as you can see, if you just focus on and you can do this, take baby steps, right? Just be like, okay, I want to like learn how to speak a little bit more openly or vulnerably. You can do it in a 12-step group. You can do it by yourself. You can do it with a trusted friend. You can do it on a pad and with a pen. Self-love. And, when you're having emotional flashbacks, what are you going to do? You're going to tell yourself everything's okay, right? You recognize it. You acknowledge your feelings and you breathe, right? Breathing and having loving, self-soothing talk falls under the category of self-love. So it's just self-love all the time on every level. It's interesting because that's kind of what it all boils down to as far as healing from this stuff is concerned. And then, you learn to be around other people that love themselves and are going to love you in return in a real way. And you're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Love. That's they say the answer is love. Yeah. So there you have it. Free self-expression, self-love, and you can just maybe, set goals for yourself. Like I'm going to voice my true thoughts and feelings on something, either to another person or again on paper, or do something nice for yourself, or maybe there's some habit that you need to change, or just a little something. You don't have to be a master. You don't have to do everything overnight. Just a little something. But if it all gets confusing for you, if you're looking to heal from CPTSD and take your life back, just always remember, keep this like in your back pocket, the back of your mind. It's like your Swiss Army knife, right? Anything for free self-expression, your genuine thoughts and feelings that you can express yourself freely with, and self-love. Those are the keys. If you can get those down, you will radically reduce the 5 key developmental arrests of CPTSD, which are, again, toxic shame, social anxiety, the vicious inner critic, self-abandonment, and emotional flashbacks. Self-abandonment is you're not loving yourself, right? So when you practice self-love, you're not abandoning yourself. That horrible, like when you break up with someone, you're like, oh my God, is this horrible? It's painful to break up with someone or get a divorce or something, but a lot of us, especially if you deal with like emotional self-abandonment stuff, it's even worse, right? Because like, well, we're alone in this sort of inner darkness. But if you love yourself, it's going to radically, and you're getting your own needs met, you're going to feel it's not going to be as hard if you have to break up with someone, right? You're still going to have your needs met, whether there's someone in your life or not. And that's what's most important to be able to achieve, right? As far as healing from CPTSD and then emotional health and well-being in general. So there you have it. Free self-expression, self-love. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.